Hello guys, and I'm Retro Critic here, and today we're gonna do a top 10 here. That's right, I'm gonna do a top 10 of the best Crash games. And in this top 10, now this list is kinda like the best Crash games out there, but it's mostly just my opinion. It's my own list. And I'm gonna do my top 10 favorite Crash Bandicoot games. Now this is my list, and it's my opinion. Now it is true I did a previous top 10, but that's kinda dated, and this is more of an updated version of my top 10. So, because, opinions change over time, and I just kind of want to give a more updated and improved top 10 of my favorite Crash games. This is me revisiting my favorite Crash games, and I changed my top 10 from the original, and some are on this list and some are not. So this is more of a better version of my top 10. This video is also a ranking part of my Crash review series. So in this video, I also kind of give my thoughts and opinions on all the Crash games I reviewed in my Crash Marathon, and I kind of do a ranking between the worst to best, basically, you can kind of say. So guys, let me present to you my top 10 favorite Crash games. Also, I won't be talking about Crash Insane Trilogy, since that's basically a remaster of the first 3 Crash games on the PS1. So the Crash Insane Trilogy doesn't really count. And I'm also excluding Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, which that's basically a remaster of Crash Team Racing on the PS1. So that definitely doesn't count because it's basically a remake of the same game for the PS4 and Xbox One. And 2, it's basically the same game, so I wouldn't really count that. It's basically Crash Team Racing, but just in HD form, just with new graphics, basically. So, yeah, no, I wouldn't count that. And besides, I haven't really reviewed that game. Well, I'm not even planning to review that game. Why bother? It's basically the same game. It was basically the same as Crash Team Racing. Also, and I haven't even played it, and I'm not even interested in playing it. So, the point is, guys, I'm not going to review games that I haven't reviewed or played, or games that are remastered in HD doesn't count. So, basically, guys, the point is, I'm not going to games I haven't reviewed or haven't played, and I'm not going to talk about games that are basically a remaster or a remake. Those games don't count. So, they're not part of this list. Now, before we get to our top 10, here are a few honorable or dishonorable mentions. Okay, so then, Crash Mind Over Mutant. This is by far the worst Crash Bandicoot game out there, and I literally mean that. Crash Mind Over Mutant is just so far different from the other Crash games that I just question its existence. It was during the worst time of the Crash Bandicoot era. It was in PS2 and Xbox One. It was in the worst time of the Crash series ever. It made Crash Bandicoot look embarrassing. Half the time the gameplay doesn't match the original games. The gameplay is so far out and different from the original series. It's just, you just question your reality. And the game is so bad that the controls are terrible. The way Crash moves the mutants is awful. Half the time, Crash doesn't even, move in this game. He just, rides on mutants half the time. That makes the game kind of worse and silly. Half the time, when he fights a boss battle, he doesn't fight a boss battle by feet, but by riding a mutant. Now, that sounds like a cool idea, but it's executed horribly. And half the time, you basically ride this mutant, not just by fighting boss battles, but also throughout the whole entire game, and it's, done so horribly, and handled so horribly. So, Crash Mind Over Mutant is just cringe, awful. And the cutscenes, I haven't got to the cutscenes yet. The cutscenes, I know what they're trying to do. I know they're trying to make it a silly cartoon. I know the cutscenes are trying to be a parody of some sort. But it just doesn't work out. It doesn't work very well. It's kind of bland. It's kind of dull, really, and it's a shit show. This game can just go to hell and suck my turd for all I care. Crash Mind Over Mutant, by the way, makes Crash of the Titans look like Citizen Kane. That's how bad, Crash Mind Over Mutant is. Okay, so now on to the next one, Crash of the Titans. Crash of the Titans is by far the second worst Crash game out there. It's as bad as Crash Mind Over Mutant, but just above it. Just underneath it, really. It's just that bad. This game is just horrendous. But Crash the Titans is a whole nother story. Crash the Titans, in its own way, a mess. So, like, okay, this game was also created by Activision. This was officially Activision's first Crash game, and it's a bad start. Oh god, where do I begin? This game was first released in the PS2 and was later transported to the Xbox 360. Boy, this game did horribly. I'm sorry, this game was horrible. I mean, it was the first game to introduce Crash riding on mutants, like Crash controls mutants, which was a cool idea, but it's executed and handled horribly. Like, the way it's done is just terrible. And half the time, you don't even, like, move like in the previous Crash games. Like, you don't, like, go around and hit boxes. You just, like, hit these, like, orbs or collect these orbs instead of, like, Wumpa Fruit. It's so weird. It's so different from the previous games. And, I mean, half the time, I feel like that, like, this should not have been a Crash game. This just should have been, like, something else. I mean, this game doesn't belong in Crash Bandicoot. This is, like, this game belongs somewhere else. Because this is not Crash Bandicoot. They try so hard to be new and different and try to be the new generation, but failed so horribly. I mean, this is kind of what the game kind of is. And the game overall is just bad. And oh, the humor. The humor's awful. It tries to do, like, burp and toilet humor. It doesn't work out very well. The burp humor sucks. The giving Crash a voice is terrible. Like, they actually give him a speaking voice, and it's done, and it sounds so annoying and horrible. I mean, this game is just, I mean, it makes Crash dumber than he is. In fact, I think it insults the intelligence of Crash Bandicoot himself and Crash fans themselves. And this game's just atrocious. This game can suck a turd. This game can eat my shit. This game can just suck it, okay? Because this game can just spit on its face for all I care. So, it's just bad. Don't play it. It's just the worst one out there. And that's kind of all I gotta say. Number 10, Crash Bash. Now, this was this was one of the first Crash Party games. And this is a Crash Party game, and it is quite fun. This game's actually pretty fun to play. I do like the story of the game where Uka Uka and Aku Aku are fighting, and Uka Uka and Aku Aku's rival has gotten so big that they now, like, the world's dependent on Aku Aku or something, and they both summon the heroes and villains, where the heroes and villains both have to fight and compete in the party games and the tournaments. So that's pretty cool and fun. And I do like the bosses. The bosses are really fun. The bosses are creative and unique, and they're pretty challenging, but they're a nice challenge, and they're fun, and they're fun to beat. The party games overall are okay. They're not the best. It's not perfect, but it is alright. The controls are not great. Like, I didn't like the controls in Crash Bash, but overall, it is a fun game. The game is overall, I think, is okay, and that's kind of my thoughts on that. But that's kind of why it's number 10 on this list. Number 9, Crash Nitro Kart. Now, this is one of the first Crash racing games on the PS2. And for a Crash racing game on the PS2 era, it's actually not that bad. It's actually a pretty good game. The story of the game is where this evil alien lord, this alien dictator, summons the heroes and villains, summons the Crash team, the Cortex team, to compete and race against each other. And the story's kind of generic and typical, like, oh yeah, like, I haven't heard that one before. It's an okay, fun story. And the game itself is actually kind of fun. Like, the gameplay is actually really fun. The racing is actually fun to play. I think the racing makes it a bit more challenging than previous Crash racing games. It's very unique. It has different moves. It makes the game all the more crazier. The worlds are fun. The worlds are interesting to explore. Some of them look kind of generic. Some of them look kind of unique, really. So it's a mix of both, really. It's kind of a mix between okay and just generic. That's kind of how I really feel about it. And the kart moves is actually kind of cool. Like the weapons are kind of cool. The weapons you throw at your competitor drivers are kind of cool. And really, the car moves are actually unique. That's kind of all I gotta say. The game overall is actually not the best, really. Like, I don't think it's like the best Crash kart racing game out there, but I think it's up there. I think it's just an average Crash racing game. It's nothing really special. I don't think it's like that amazing or great racing game. Well, I will say the driving is kind of hard. The driving sucks. The controllers are kind of frustrating. That's all I gotta say. And the bosses are not that great. The bosses are okay. Like, I do like the bosses, but the bosses are just not that great. The racing's hard. Like, the racing makes it more challenging, but I feel like it's too challenging. It's the hardest Crash racing. I mean, it's honestly the hardest Crash racing game out there because the way the control, I don't know, it's like how the controllers are done, but like, seriously, the way I move is just frustrating. frustrating. The way I move in this game is just really hard. Like, oh my god. But that's really my only complaint. And overall, I just think it's just a okay Crash racing game. And that's my thoughts on that. Number 8, Crash Tag Team Racing. Now, I like this Crash racing game a bit better because, one, you, like, shoot while you're racing. Okay, now that's kind of awesome. Shooting while racing is actually a cool idea, and it works very well here. You throw basically generic weapons at your driving competitors. The weapons you use are pretty cool. But when you actually shoot while driving, now that's kind of awesome. You basically get to shoot the other drivers as you're racing in the competitive race, and that's kind of cool. And that was always fun to play. And the story is not the best. Like, I don't think the story's really that great. So, I mean, the story is the weakest part of the game. I mean, the story, like, what? You have to help Von Clutch's heart and restore his heart. But then, like, you and Cortex have to compete each other and help each other. And then he betrays our main heroes. And then he becomes the main villain. But then you stop at the end. It's just kind of generic. And, like, helping his amuse park and helping him restore his Von Clutch's auto world is just kind of boring and generic. But the gameplay overall is actually what shines here. The gameplay is really cool and fun here. The racing is actually really more faster and easier to control. Like, the controls are really playable here. It's really fun. The racing is actually really cool here this time. The worlds are not that special and great. Like, I don't think the worlds look that interesting, but the gameplay of the racing is really cool and fun here. Overall, the racing is actually really great here, and it shines the most in this game. But what's also a bonus about this game is that you actually do platforming. That's right. You actually go around, hit enemies, collect coins to unlock the next world. I'm not kidding. Like, after you race, you actually, like, do platforming in this game. Now, it's basically an open world, but only an open world hub world. You do go to different areas in the hub world, like different worlds in the game, but that's really about it. But you're mostly in the hub world throughout the whole game. But think about this. It's like another Crash open world 3D game, and that's actually kind of really cool. The platforming's very generic here. The platforming's overall okay. It's not great, but it's just okay. You do go around and punching enemies, which is actually really cool and fun. All you do is collect coins, collect objects, special items to unlock the next world, or go to the next level, and that's about it. So you can, like, head to the next level or something. And the levels are just okay. But overall, the open world platforming is actually kind of average in this game. It is kind of fun once in a while, but it kind of gets boring either way. But I did enjoy it while last. But overall, Crash Tag Team Racing is an average game, but it is, I do find it more fun than Nitro Kart, and that's why it's on this list. It's a bit more entertaining than Nitro Kart, and this Crash Racing game is a bit more fun than the previous one. So that's why it's on this list, and that's my thoughts on this game. Number 7, the Crash Game Boy Advance games. The Crash Game Boy Advance games were actually really fun. They went back to basics. They were like similar to the PS1 Crash games. They were really fun. The stories were highly original and engaging. There were new villains and old villains to fight. You know, half the time, yes, you fight Cortex and Trophy, but you also fight new villains like Entrancer or Evil Crash. You know, that was always cool and the fun part about that. You know, fighting Evil Crash was cool. Entrancer was an awesome villain. Cortex and Uka felt like real villains again. And even Trophy was intimidating, cool in this game. It was really fun and awesome. The traps were hard. I mean, it was challenging in a good way. It was a fun little Game Boy Advance adventure games. These Game Boy Advance games were really fun to play and explore, and you collect Wampa Fruit, hit boxes. You go back to hitting boxes, which was cool and fun. Crash's moves were awesome as always. Crash's moves were cool. Crash spinning his attacks were really cool and fun in this game. But overall, downright, it was just a cool, fun game. These games were really cool. These were real Crash Bandicoot games that I would definitely recommend play. These Crash games are overall really good, fun games. And that's my thoughts on those games, and that's why it's on this list. Okay, so now, number 6. Crash Bandicoot and the Wrath of Cortex. Now, Crash Bandicoot and the Wrath of Cortex is, in my opinion, a really underrated game, and I appreciate the game more as time has gone by. Now, I did play this game while growing up, and I have nostalgia on it, but because I have nostalgia on it, that aside, I'm not going to let that cloud my judgment. Now, looking at this game objectively, it's actually not that bad. This game is actually pretty good, honestly. This is actually a pretty average and really decent, good, solid, good Crash game. Even though it's the weakest of the PS2 Crash games, I do feel like fans hate on this game a little too much. I do feel like this game has gotten a lot of hate, a lot of unfair hate, and that's my problem with that. I do agree it's the most weakest of the PS2 Crash games, but it's the most underrated ones. Now, it is Crash's first PS2 game, and even though this is the first next-gen Crash Bandicoot game on the PS2, it did try its best. Yes, this is the first time that the Crash franchise was sold to a different company, and it was sold to a different, development company, studio. So, they tried their best. They were new at it. The people who made this game were new at this. They did try their best to be similar to the first 3 original games, and I'm gonna be honest, give their credit, they did try their best. But this game, honestly, is actually a pretty good game. The story of the game is where Cortex and Uka Uka have their revenge again, and Cortex creates a new mutant called Crunch. A better Bandicoot called Crunch. And Uka Uka also unleashes the elementals. So Cortex creates Crunch and Uka Uka unleashes the elementals. Now that's amazing. And we are for the first time introduced to Crunch. And we are also introduced to the elementals. And this is a really cool concept of the game. It's to Crash and then to save the world. And it's up to Crash and Coco and Uka Uka to stop them. This game is a lot like a Crash 3. I'll give them that. But now here's the thing. Even though this game is like a Crash 3, I mean, it tries to be a sequel to Crash 3. It does try to be its own game and an original, to be fair. Even though this game is too much like a copycat like a Crash 3, it is a sequel to Crash 3, so they didn't have much to go with, and I can see why. And they did try their best. And honestly, the game tried to be its own and have its own style, and I really do appreciate that. Now, first of all, the gameplay wasn't that great, but as you get used to it, it's actually not that bad. The gameplay is really fun here. The collectibles are fun, the worlds are great, the controllers are not that great, but I get used to it. The worlds are actually pretty fun to explore. The worlds are original and creative. I do like the worlds. They're all weathery-like. Yes, the worlds are generic, but some of the worlds are fun. The controllers are not that great, but as you get used to the controllers, I get used to them. But as you get used to them, the controllers are actually pretty good. Like, as you get used to the game, you get more better at it, and that's my experience, really, with this game. I got more better at the game. I got more used to it, really. The game kind of grown on me, and that's why I like it so much. The world levels are fun. The racing ones are not that great, I'll tell you that. That's my only complaint. But now the bosses. Now you fight like Crunch and the elementals, and Crunch turns into one of the elemental forms. And all the Crunch bosses are actually pretty easy and sometimes challenging. They're pretty fun. But my only favorite boss battle is the Air Crunch boss fight. This one was awesome. It actually felt like really challenging. It was really fun to play. Now all the Crunch bosses are kind of generic. All the Crunch bosses are actually kind of okay. Like they are challenging once in a while. They can be tough once in a while, but that's really bad. But they're kind of easy, but they're mostly easy. My favorite ones are the water one. The water Crunch boss fight I like a lot. The water boss Crunch fight was really fun. Even though it was the most easiest one, it was still fun, and I just kind of like it, really. My most favorite one is the air boss Crunch fight. The air boss Crunch fight is my favorite. It actually felt like a challenging boss fight. And it was a really fun boss. And this one was a really fun boss fight. I highly recommend. I actually had fun with it. I actually just did like it and enjoy it. Cool, the bosses are really cool here. And the final boss is terrible. Not that great, but I'll leave it as that. Final boss, in my opinion, is mediocre in the game. But overall, the game is actually a solid B for me. I think it's okay. I think it's a fun game. Objectively, it's a good game. I do appreciate the game more. It's really great. It's overall a fun game. So overall, I do think Crash Wrath of Cortex is a very underrated game. I appreciate the game more as time has gone by. And overall, it's actually a really good game. And overall, this game's really fun to me. So that's my thoughts on Wrath of Cortex, and that's why it's on number 6 on this list. Number 5, Crash Team Racing. That's right. The original Crash Team Racing is number 5 on this list. Crash Team Racing on the PS1 is an awesome game, and Crash Team Racing is the first Crash Racing game ever in the whole franchise on the PS1, and it's a great game. I highly recommend it. The story is where an evil villain called Dr. Nitrous Oxide from space invades Earth and starts a racing competition and summons people to win his racing tournament so he can rule the world. I know it's silly. It's a cliche kind of story in the game. But Nitrous Oxide is actually a really cool and awesome villain. In the Nitrous Oxide boss fight is a really cool one. It was fun racing against him. And speaking of bosses, the bosses are really awesome and fun here, like the Polar Bear boss fight. Oh, I mean, who cannot talk about the Polar Bear boss fight? I mean, everyone loves the Polar Bear boss boss fight. I mean, this guy was awesome to fight and beat. The polar bear boss fight was enjoyable and fun. He was just fantastic and the bosses in the game are really original and fun and cool. So the bosses in the game are really awesome and they're really fun to play and beat. And the racing, I mean, this is a cool game to play with friends. This is an awesome game to play with friends. It's a really fun game. I highly recommend it. And Crash Team Racing is overall a really cool, fun game to play with family and friends. And even but hell, I mean, if you want like maybe, okay, if you don't have a PS1, I don't think everybody has a PS1, of course, but if you have like maybe your PS4 and you want to play a similar Crash racing game, well, play the remaster of Crash Nitro Field, which Crash Nitro Field is a remaster of Crash Team Racing, like a remake of some sorts, and Crash Team Racing. And it's a really fun game, so play that if you will. I recommend playing that too if you want to go as far to do that. And overall, this is a cool game, and I recommend it. Number 4, Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. Now, Crash Bandicoot 2 is a really good game. It's really awesome to play. For a sequel for the first Crash Bandicoot game, it delivers. And I would say that, you know, it's even better than the first one. Well, more fun than the first one. And, I mean, the worlds are... This time, it's more challenging and harder. I mean, I could barely pass and beat this game. It was so hard to beat it. And going through the obstacles and the traps were difficult and more hard. But either way, it was a fun game. The bosses, oh my god, first game to introduce Tiny the Tiger. Tiny the Tiger was a cool, fun boss battle here. And he gets better in the next few games, and he's more awesome in later games. And he's a better boss battle in later games. And his boss battles are more fun in later games. And Cortex is back, better than ever, and Cortex feels like an actual real villain here, and it's really cool and fun. And the bosses are enjoyable in this game. The bosses are a good challenge in the game, and they're fun to beat. And getting the crystals is actually fun. This is more easier this time, but it's actually fun. It's more easier than the first game, I'll give it that. Like, it's less hard than the first game, but it's more fun either way. And you collect the crystals and the gems like usual, same as always. And it's actually a good game to complete. It was a hard game to complete. Either way, it was a worthwhile game to play and complete. And this game was just awesome, and they gave Crash more new moves and more spin attacks. I love it. This is the first game that introduces Coco. So Coco as a character is great here. And overall, and my only complaint was Coco wasn't a playable character. But they did it in the third game, and we'll get to that. But overall, Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Out is a really awesome game. It's a fun game. It's a good sequel to the original, and it's a fun game of the series. And it's what made Crash Bandicoot amazing in the first place. Number 3, Crash Bandicoot, the original Crash Bandicoot, the first one in the series. So the first Crash Bandicoot is by far a really good game, and I put this on number 3 because I think it's actually the best Crash. I think the original is the best Crash Bandicoot game out there. Even though my only complaint is it is so hard I could barely pass it. I barely passed this game. This is the hardest game I ever played, and it was just that hard. It's super challenging, and it's just so difficult to even pass. But that aside, the game is a hell of a lot of fun. The running is fun. The spinning is cool. Hitting the crates, oh man, hitting those box crates is really enjoyable. The worlds are cool to explore. The worlds are original here. The boss battles are great. Like, the boss battles are the funnest I ever seen. And my favorite's Pinstripe. Yeah, that mafia gangster rat that actually, like, shoots you in the game. Literally shoots you with a machine gun. God, I wish they'd bring that back in kids' games. But that aside, I mean, I do miss Pinstripe, but God, I wish they'd bring back Pinstripe. He's only appeared in cameos and racing games, and a character in like one racing game, but that's it. But God, I wish they'd bring it back. Maybe in a future Crash game. You never know, because Crash is having a good comeback, I'll tell you that. But that aside, this game is the original game that started all. This game we get to see how Crash is created. We get to see Crash's origins, and we see Dr. Cortex and Dr. Brio working together. And Dr. Brio is a cool boss fight, I'll tell you that. Like, when he turns to like the big muscly mutant, like a big muscle character, he's really awesome to fight. He's the toughest boss battle ever, the longest boss battle in the game, and he's a really fun boss fight. And overall, I mean, it's just a really fun game. It's a really cool game. It's a good hero's journey, a good adventure game. It's really fun. It's a good challenging game. It's the one that started all. I mean, this game skyrocketed in the mid-90s and literally competed against Mario. And Sonic. It was that huge at the time. And you can see why, because Crash was a big phenomenon back then. And today, I think it is still. I mean, it has its followers, but today still once in a while it is. And that aside, it's just such a good game. It's a classic. I recommend it. And, I mean, why? And it's the game that started it all. And number 2, Crash Twinsanity. Crash Twinsanity is just an awesome game. It's my favorites. I mean, it's about where, like, Crash and Cortex both have to work together, and they have to fight against the evil twins. The evil twins are like these evil alien birds. But what makes this game so good is that Crash and Cortex are working together the first time, and it's quite an interesting dynamic character duo here. I mean, and their chemistry is so weird, but their chemistry is so funny at the same time. And by the way, this is the funniest Crash game ever. I mean, this is the funniest game in the Crash series, and it delivers. It is so fun. It's good. It's amazing. Oh, and you actually fight new villains and old villains through your journey. The new villains are actually pretty cool. Once in a while, you get to fight Cortex's old teacher, which is Mrs. Amberly. Oh my God, right? And you also get to fight, and you also get to see old villains and a few cameos appearances here and there. But you get to fight like Dangle Dial as a boss battle, and you get to fight Engine and N-Trophy and Brio. But Engine is an okay boss, but fighting N-Trophy and Brio, they're a fun boss, I'll tell you that. And it's just such a fun, cool game. This game is so for the fans. This game is for the fans. It's really cool and fun. And what I like about this game is that it's a third world. It's like, I think, the first third world open world Crash game. That's right. It's like the first open world Crash game. It's never happened before. And this game is so cool and it's creative and it's just funny. And the music is so great, and it's like the first open world Crash game. And as the first open world Crash game, it delivers. For an open world game, it's actually really fun, and in an open world game, there's a lot of stuff to do, and it's really great, and it's actually really cool, by the way. And the music, oh my God, the music is so creative and original here. The music is so catchy and really fun to listen to. The music, like, is just spot on. It's so, like, I don't know, it's just so mesmerizing to hear the music in this game. The soundtrack, the music in this game is so great in this game. The soundtrack of the game, the music of the game is just so phenomenal in this game. The soundtrack is just amazing. It's just so good in this game. And really, I mean, it's just such a fun game. The bosses are great. And fun to beat and play against. The enemies are cool to play. The collectibles are easy and fun. But it's the journey. It's really more of an experience. The game feels more of an experience, really, and that's the good part about that. It's really meant to be a story-driven, fun game. It's really meant to be more of a story, experience-driven kind of game, and it's executed so well, and it's done so well, and it's just such a good game. Oh, and we're also introduced to Nina Cortex. Cortex's niece. And this is Nina Cortex's first video game appearance, and this is Cortex's niece. And you actually get to play Nina, and it's actually a cool idea, and playing Nina is actually fun and cool. And I almost forgot, you get to play Cortex here. Yeah, you get to play Cortex for the first time, and God, shooting his laser blast is so cool, and he is such a cool character to play, and God, playing as Cortex is such a good idea, playing as Cortex is such a good idea and a good concept, and God, when he shoots his laser blast, his laser gun, it's so cool, and God, playing as Cortex shooting his laser beam is so fun to play, and God, playing his laser beam is so cool to play. God, so great. I'm sorry, it's so cool. But that aside, overall, Crash Twinsanity is a really fun, awesome game. I highly recommend it. This game's for the fans, and it's just for Crash fans only. It's a really cool, fun game, and that's why it's the best, and that's why it's my favorite, and it's on this list. And now, my number one favorite Crash game is Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped is by far the best Crash game out there, and it's my personal favorite. Why? Because, okay, this is the third in the trilogy, and it delivers well. It's the finale in the trilogy, and it's the best one in the trilogy ever. It feels like an epic game as you play it. It's so awesome, and it's such a fun game, and it feels like the finale in a good trilogy, and it feels like an epic game as you play it. And the story of the game is where Cortex meets Uka Uka Dr. N Trophy. And Dr. N Trophy and Uka Uka and Dr. N Trophy are first introduced in this game. This is their first video game appearance. And Uka Uka actually is more intimidating in this game. I'll go as far as to say this is Uka Uka's more scarier roles here. And same thing with N Trophy. N Trophy is an intimidating villain. And I would say N Trophy is a really cool villain here. And it's where they actually do time warps, and it's up to Crash and Coco have to stop them. And it's where they open up the time warps and you go to, and it's where it's where they open up time warps. And it's where they open up time warps so they want to go to different worlds, I guess, and take over. And I don't know, I guess they want to open up time warps and conquer the different time warps, I guess. I don't know. And it's up to Crash, Aku, and Coco to stop them and save the world. And it feels like a finale in a trilogy. And as the third game in the trilogy, it delivers. It's great. It just feels like an epic game. It's really awesome. I like it a lot. It's phenomenal. This is an awesome part of this is an awesome game for part of the trilogy, and this game is the first time you get to play Coco as a playable character. Now that's a bonus. Coco's now playable. Oh, and this is the first Crash game where Coco is now a playable character here. Okay, now that gets another star. Okay, now that gets another star because now you get to play as Coco, and she's really great here. She's fun to play. She actually feels playable here, and that's what I like about it. Okay, and what's cool is she's more playable here. She's more easier and fun to control, and her levels are actually fun and cool. I'll give them that. I'll give them credit for that. And overall, in the worlds, different time world, different worlds in time, medieval, you name it. It's really cool and fun. You're in the future. It's you get different moves, and you go to different time warps, and you go to different time warps, you go to different time zones. Like you're in the medieval ages, you're in the Middle Ages, you're in the future, you're in the dinosaur age. You're in the medieval time. You're in the Egyptian time. You're in the Egyptian era. You're in the dinosaur era. You're in the future world or something like that. And it's just really cool and fun. And you get to ride planes, motorcycle, you name it. And Crash has awesome moves. It's the first game to introduce the bazooka. Awesome. He gets awesome spinning attacks, the air jump attack. You name it. And this is the first game where Crash rides a motorcycle. And the way Crash rides a motorcycle is actually really cool and well done here. And he rides a plane and you ride a shooting plane. That's cool. Shooting the plane. And this is the first game where he introduces the bazooka here and Crash has a jumping spinning move. I like that a lot. Oh, it's so cool. It's awesome. The tornado spin, and it's really cool here. The game is just really fun. I highly recommend it. It's the best Crash game ever. It's what made Crash so amazing, and the graphics improved here, and I feel like the game's so fun. With the crystals and gems you get, and it's so rewarding in the end, and it's a good game to complete, and you get the tornado spin. So in this game, it introduces the tornado spin. It's a jump tornado. It's a game. It introduces the tornado, the air jump, the tornado spin. And it's a really cool, fun game. The graphics improve here. The graphics are really better here from the first game. You collect like always. You collect crystals and gems, and it feels worthwhile to get them. The ending feels worthwhile. It feels like worthwhile game to complete. Completing the game is actually really good and fun here. It's just totally worthwhile. I highly recommend it. The game overall, this is what made Crash Bandicoot great. This is what made Crash Bandicoot popular in the first place. And overall, Crash Warped is an awesome game that I highly recommend. Crash Warped gets a solid A for me. It's just that good. It's just such an awesome game. I recommend everyone to play it. It's just that good. Everyone should play it. And that's my thoughts on that. And so, guys, that's my thoughts on that. That's my thoughts on those games. So that was my number one. And also, just for a bonus, I just want to just add and just tell you guys about Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, the official sequel to Crash 3. Okay, even though I haven't reviewed this game yet, I actually recently played it and I loved it. You know what? I instantly loved it. This game is awesome. It's so great. This is the Crash game I've been waiting for years. This is the kind of Crash Bandicoot game I always wanted to play, and it's done so well. and it delivers. It's just so great. Oh my god. And again, even though I haven't reviewed this game, I have played it recently, and I just gotta tell you people, it's actually great. I highly recommend it. Like, okay, I might review that game one day, just not now. I'm just tired. I need a break. I'm not in the mood. Like, again, I might review that game one day, just not now. I just need a mental break, and I'm just not in the mood to do it, and I just want to move on to other things for now. For now. But I will tell you, playing this game is amazing. So Crash Bandicoot's About Time is an amazing game. I recommend it. So that's my bonus in this top. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. Oh my god. So in Crash Bandicoot, It's About Time, this is what I always wanted in a Crash game. This is what I always wanted in a Crash game. I've been waiting for this kind of Crash game in my whole life. This is what I always wanted. It's so great. It's just amazing. I'm loving every second of it. I might talk about one day, just not. I might talk about one day, just not now. You know, I'm not in the mood to talk about it now. But even though this is the official sequel to Crash 3, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time is an amazing game, and I highly recommend it. This game's awesome. It's great. There's just something charming about this game. It just feels like the past, but just revitalized. It honestly, in my opinion, is a good comeback for Crash Bandicoot, and that's all I gotta say. So guys, that was my top 10. I hope you enjoyed my list in this video, and that's kind of all I gotta say, really. And so guys, that's all I gotta say. That's my thoughts, and I hope you enjoyed my top 10. Do you like my list? Your list matches mine? Do you like it? Let me know in the comments whether my list matches yours. I hope you liked my top 10, and that's all I gotta say, guys. And have a good one. And guys, I'm Retro Critic, and I'm out. And have a good one. Take care, and peace out. Bye.